Because once y'all start something, y'all gonna flow with it.
Okay, so I got a thought for you. We've noticed a shift in the way things are going, especially in the African-American male community. Let's talk about some of these issues, and whatever come to mind, it all goes to mental health.
What's up, everyone? I'm Cortez Tunley, where the Empower Voice is rising, and I'm here hanging out today with my partner.
I'm Leon Skillens with Skills on Wheels Counseling Services.
Man, we're happy to be here today, and what we're here to talk about a little bit is just mental health, and most particularly how it pertains to men and mental health and some of the barriers thereof. And so, we're going to be obviously talking about some of the barriers that we're seeing, some of the impediments to mental health, some of the things that we think make our culture unique, some of the things we make men culture unique, and hopefully we can reach out to someone today that maybe is in need of help, or maybe thinking they might need some help, or maybe somebody that knows someone who needs some help, and maybe give you some resources, man. And so I'm glad you're joining us today. Leon, tell me what's on your mind, man.
Man, I'm just glad to be here, man, with you guys providing this platform, because so many times, men, we don't really get that opportunity, man. We kind of behind the scenes or whatever, but for you guys to come out with a platform like this and produce a podcast like this, I think it's second to none, because I think it's so important that we use these type of platforms to get our message out there. So I'm grateful and thankful that you guys thought of us when you were thinking about implementing something and doing something in 2025. So I'm just happy to be here.
Right on, right on. Yeah, so for those that don't know, this has been a project in the making for the better part of a year. Man, we've been having some conversations back and forth. And so I'm really happy that this has come to fruition and we're now at the table having a conversation. Guys, I think this is a deep, deep topic. And I think there's a lot of people who can really use some help out there, man. I'm so happy to be a part of this movement. So, man, that being said, let's talk about kind of where we come from, man, who we are as individuals, man. Sir. So I know you're a father, I'm a father. Let's talk briefly about that, man.
Okay.
What's your family like?
So for me, I grew up in a home with two parents, mother and father. We were raised under Christian values, hard work ethic, get an education, come home, get a job, and start a family. But what I found out over the years, Cortez, is that it don't always work in that ABC order, that 1, 2, 3 order. Right. You got to be able to be flexible. You got to be able to adjust on the fly. In football, we call it an audible. You got to be able to audible and check out of some situations and put yourself in a better situation.
So you got punt.
Yeah. So and sometimes you don't want to punt, but we on that PlayStation. You on 4th and long, and you're like, I'm going to go ahead and use this down to try to get the first down. Then whoever you playing, your son or whatever, you're like, Pop, you made it easy for me to get in the red zone. So you do got to punt it away.
Right, you got to punt.
So going back to where I come from, I was a young father, Cortez. My oldest son is 33 years old. So that put me as a young father at 16. Had no clue, you know what I mean? I just doing what I thought was the right thing to do. Yeah. But, it just happened to be that I had my first son at the age of 16. And wasn't prepared, but, it just was like, I know that I got a responsibility. Now, what that looked like, I don't know, but I knew I had to step up and make sure that kid at that time had the best outcome. And that was just for me to be available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talking about some of those stressors that we deal with as young men, that's a major one. And that's one that our kids are still dealing with today. Man, and for me, I'm very similar, man. I come from a 2-family household as well, a 2-parent household. And so, my parents were together for many years. And there was 3 in my initial household. Myself, I'm the oldest. Had a little brother 7 years younger than I am, and then a little sister 10 years younger than I am. And God bless her soul, she's gone on to glory. But, man, I can tell you just that whole thing. And when I was growing up, man, I saw the gambit, and so things from what marital life looked like, things that wasn't always, on the up and clear, wasn't always a happy family situation. So, alcoholism to abuse to aggression, and seeing what that looks like, and then seeing ultimately what divorce looks like and where that takes parents. And yeah, I think you tend to bring things from your childhood into your relationships.
Sure.
And so when I grew up, one of the things I wanted to do was to be a steady father and not be a product of divorce, and have my kids be a product of divorce. And so God bless me and my wife have really worked hard at that part of it now, 30 years in the making, man.
Beautiful.
So
That's
yeah,
that black love, Cortez. You're doing something right over there.
Yeah, well, you know, she been chasing me since third grade, though. So I finally gave in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I finally gave in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But you know, I've been blessed to have children of my own. I've got a 35-year-old daughter, and I've got a 29-year-old daughter, and then I've got my son, who is a part of our organization, and in his own rights, developing his own ideals and programs as well, and that's LaRon. And so he's joining us here today, just in the background. He may chime in and chop it up with us a little bit today as well. But, you know, like we were talking about a little bit earlier in the pre-takes, man, I was really, as a young man, going through these ideas about what I wanted to be at certain ages in life. You know, when I was coming up, there was this idea that you wrote down what you wanted to do, what you wanted to achieve, and you strove hard to make those particular goals come true. Man, and so I found myself saying I wanted to be married by a certain age. I wanted to have kids by a certain age. I wanted to have a house by a certain age. I wanted to have $250,000 in the bank by a certain age. And the funniest thing is a lot of those things came to fruition. And when I got to the $1 million part of the $250,000 part of it, I was looking at it, it's like, I got the $250,000. But it's just in debt. Yeah. So it was debt. And so stress has become a part of everything that we deal with, you know. And so learning how to cope with that, learning how to address that, learning how to put that in its proper perspective has been difficult. And I was blessed enough to have resources to kind of help me with that. Like you and I both know, some don't. And so it creates these big rifts out there, man. And so those are things we kind of want to have some conversations about. How do we navigate that? What works for some, what works for others, what didn't work in the past, and how to avoid those particular things. I think is something that's pretty critical.
And I want to back up and let our audience know that Skills on Wheels is a not-for-profit mobile mental health clinic. And what we do is we provide free therapy services to African Americans in our community that look like you and me, but predominantly, in particular, African American males. You know, we believe that everybody deserves a therapist and everybody should try therapy. So with Skills on Wheels, like I said, we turned the RV Cortez into a mobile mental health clinic.
Amazing.
Didn't know what we were doing. My wife and I, you know, we just had this vision of how we wanted to give back to the community. And we thought, what better way than to turn the RV into a mobile mental health clinic. And to tell you how we got the Skills on Wheels, we own Amazing Skills Counseling Services, which is a profit side where we build insurances and we help people that way. But we wanted to take it even farther and to give free services to people in our community. Nice. And again, especially the African American community, because so many times, you know, there are not a lot of services for African Americans, let alone men. And, you know, women, you know, they got all kind of services. But when it comes to men, it's like, oh, man, you don't need this. You don't need that. You should be out working. You know, you strong. You macho, you this, you that, go out there and get a job. But man, what we're finding out, Cortez, is that with the shift in the country right now, men are needing help just like women. And what are we doing about it? You know, we're turning things into a situation where we're shunning men, but at the same time, you know, it's men reaching out to really want help. So I think, like you said, for us having this conversation about stress, anxiety, and all of these things that play a part of our mentals is important. I think that we should have more conversations and talk about things like this.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, well, you talk about the stigmas of counseling as it pertains to men. Man, we have a difficult time internally with that because, you know, it's almost yielding that we are vulnerable, that we have these sides of us that really need that help and that we don't have the resources internally to deal with that ourselves. You know, we're taught pretty early, man, from childhood, you know, you suck it up, man up, you know, pony up, cowboy up, whatever it is. There's all kind of, you know, wordages for it. But, you know, you don't let pain affect you as a man. You know, you don't let, you know, downsides affect you. You learn to deal with that yourself, you know, or you push it down, you suppress it. Mm-hmm. And what we've come to find out is that you can't suppress those emotions like that. you can, but if you do it, it has some alter effects. It turns toxic. It comes out in negative ways. And unfortunately, in the men community, what's more acceptable is alcoholism or drugs.
Yeah.
You use those
problem.
as a way to cope. And, some people see that as, that's everyone's doing that. So it's a cool thing to do, right? But we know in the end, that's toxic and it creates problems all over the place, not only for the individual man, but then for his family setting, and so others around him, his peripherals. It's a difficult thing.
So I believe you remember that saying that athlete, what goes on in the locker room stays in the locker room. Well, how about this? Let's take it even farther and go back to home. Remember what Daddy used to say? What goes on in this house
stays
in this house.
Stays in this house.
And I get that. That, like you said, we come from a time and an era where that was the culture. But guess what? As we've gotten older and as I've gotten older, I thought about that, and I believe that some of those ways that we were taught kind of has haunted us today. And what I mean by that is, when you alluded earlier about how we suppress things and hold on to them and try to deal with them in ways that we see fitting and becoming, that's not the way to do it. So what happens is when men get into their own relationships or they get out there and they start creating their social networks with other people and other individuals, some of these things come out that they haven't dealt with over the years, like, being traumatized in whatever area that caused the trauma in their life or whatever it is that's been holding them back for so many years. It's like it comes out now because it hadn't been dealt with. Because remember, nobody wanted to talk about it. It was like, keep that quiet or hush, hush. And if you did, and if you didn't, you got punished for that. And I think we're paying for it today because of some of these things that hadn't been dealt with over the years.
Most definitely. I would agree with that statement. Yeah. So we talk about men and men health, and we talk about the need for it, and there's been countless studies, there's been countless reports that have come out, and depending on what side of the aisle you sit on, you're going to have different beliefs about that. But one thing that seems to be pretty common is that men suffer from sexual trauma probably as much, if not more, than females to some degree, not only in their personal lives, but in their workplace lives. They suffer through harassments and things like that. We typically then again don't openly talk about those things. We typically keep that to ourselves because it plays on our psyche about who we are individually. In my experience in working with juvenile services, and I've been with juvenile service over 30 years, man, in various forms and capacities. But one of the things that we learned pretty quickly, man, is that men underreport, boys underreport.
Most definitely, and that's one of the stats that's out there is that men just let it roll off of us, man. We like, think about it with the relationship with your wife. You having this conversation, you're like, all right, baby, I'm done with that, and we didn't get no resolve or nothing like that. But you like, I'm just gonna end that because it ain't going nowhere. It's the same thing. Like you said, men get harassed. Men are domestic violence. Not just perpetrators and all this and that. They've been abused by people, but it just goes underreported. And it's just one of those things that we're just not going to come out there and shame ourselves even more.
Well, and what we learned so early, man, is that anger is the truest form of dealing with those particular things. So aggression and anger becomes an outlet for us. And unfortunately, for our young men, they learn that too early. And like I said, it affects their school situation, it affects their relationship situation, their relationships with their parents, and unfortunately, they take that into other areas. And it's on, I used to call anger kind of a doing emotion because you could do something with that. You know what I mean? You're angry, you can go and break something, or you can get into a fight. You can cuss somebody, right? It feels like you're taking some affirmative action. Ultimately, though, it's a secondary emotion. The first emotion is I feel hurt. I feel taken advantage of. I was vulnerable and I let my guards down, let somebody into my inner circle, and they took advantage of that. It's hard for a boy to say to someone else, hey, I had this trusting relationship with this particular guy, man, and he touched me, or he raped me. How do you have those conversations? How do you get into that as a young boy and as a young man, and not then start challenging your own psyche about who you are individually? And so that plays on our reporting and it plays on what we deal with. But like I say, we tend to then just hold that back and not say anything about those particular things. And ultimately it comes out in constant kind of way, And so that's one of those barriers I think, continues to be something that eludes men from being able to address healing process and look at that. So what are some things that you're seeing right now in your work or in your efforts, Leon, that maybe is helping to bridge some of those gaps?
So like you said, anger is at the forefront, and anger is a normal human emotion. Like you said, everybody gets angry. And so what we try to teach in therapy is how do you get in control of that anger, because again, it is normal, but what you do with it is not normal, if that makes sense, like how you react to it and things like that. Because what we're finding out is when you get angry and you're not leveled off or you're not grounded, guess what? That turns into violence.
Yep.
It turns into alcohol abuse. It turns into drug abuse. And then, like you said, when you start blaming people for that, then you go into isolation.
Yeah.
And when you get isolated from everybody, you know that's not good, because now you're in a dark place. And when you're in a dark place and you don't have any support or you don't have any motivation or anybody to pat you on the back or to empower you, you start spiraling into this black hole. And then you start just going further and further away from everybody. And now that emotion of anger is turned into, guess what? Denial. And then denial turns into bargaining. Then bargaining turns into, I thought I had it under control. So now you've turned this into a really, really crisis that if you would have dealt with it up front, then you could get some help. So that's what Skills on Wheels is all about. We're trying to promote programs and get opportunities out there for people, again, in the era, especially the African-American male population who really throughout history, if you look at it, we go back to the Tuskegee study and all of those type of things that's happened along the way in history. A lot of it has to do with mistrust. People saying that they're going to do this and they're going to do that. Now, we've seen over the years, like I said, women get help, but what about men? We've been taught to be tough and to, this and that. But guess what? Those days are long gone. Now men are really like being vulnerable and saying, look, I need some help, because turning to the streets and drugs is not working. So I'm here. But then when we get people there, these environments are not male friendly, or they're not the environments or just the settings are not conducive for men. And so when men feel like, here we go again, nobody wants to help me, then we have these situations where we're talking about with the stress and all of that anxiety and all of those things that take place. And now we got to deal with it from a criminal justice standpoint, when we could have eradicated it up front. And then with the climate of the country right now, Cortez is not helping none either. So we are in a epidemic as it relates to the African-American male, and we got to do something about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. As an existential crisis that we're going through, man. We are really trying to identify ourselves and recreate who we are and moving forward, because there's threats on all levels. Yeah, threats on all levels. And so you hear about, as you talk about the change in the political climate, one way or another, we are going to cope with our presidential stance moving forward. He's our president, so we have to obviously learn how to address those particular things. But the movements, the topics that seem to be broached right now certainly seem to be concerning about work that has been predominantly supportive of Black interest and Blacks moving forward, and especially Black families moving forward. Man, for many, many years, it seems that, there's this whole agenda to undo those particular things. And I know we don't really want to turn this into a political debate and conversation, but, it's just how then do men then look at that and then continue to look in the face of their families and present that monicum of hope and growth? How do you keep, your kids feeling like, there's something worthwhile to move forward towards? When you see, some of the hate mongering, when you see some of the policies that seem to attack their opportunities for equal opportunity, when you see such divisiveness across the nation at times, you see the violence that's widespread across, not only in, just their immediate communities, but then worldwide, the violence that they're seeing, that in and of itself, man, is traumatic. And so just learning how to put all that in proper perspective sometimes is pretty difficult.